Welcome back. You tuned into Mud Morning Live here on Salam Media, and today we are having a panel discussion on the life orientation component, that is the comprehensive sex education, sexuality education. And yes, there have been many concerns raised, especially amongst parent bodies, family groups, religious bodies, concerned citizens around the actual content, the scripted lesson plans, the intention behind it in terms of uh, what's happening to family values, family life being eroded. So, joining us to discuss this issue and help us understand the issue, I have Ismail Taladia, and he's a senior curriculum planner, life orientation, life skills department, Western Cape Education Department. He's currently reading for his PhD. He's also a cricket coach as well. He's taught life orientation and life science in school. He's passionate about teaching and creating opportunities for his learners and teachers. He is a subject advisor in Metro South Education District before being appointed to the post of senior curriculum planner of life orientation. Then I have Matakanya joining us as well, and he is the chair of the National Association of School Governing Bodies. And then joining us on the line from Arizona is Sharon Slater. She's the president of Family Watch International, a nonprofit organization in consultative status with the Economic and Social Council of the United Nations. She also shares the UN Family Rights Caucus and is a consultant to the multiple UN member states, including Africa and OIC countries, on human sexuality and family policy. Good morning, Ismail, and welcome to Salam Media.
Good morning and assalamu alaikum to you and to your viewers and listeners.
Walaikum salam, and good morning, Matakanya, and welcome to Mid Morning Live.
Good morning, Miriam. Good morning, Esman, and every visitor there.
And let's welcome all the way from Arizona, and we deeply in gratitude for taking time of her rest time. It's currently 1 a.m., I'm told, in Arizona. Good morning, Sharon.
Good morning. Sharon, thank you for having me.
Yes, and thank you for your time at this. It's a very early morning for you.
Yes, it is, but it's my pleasure.
Thanks so much. So, Sharon, maybe I think we should start with you. I seen a clip where you were interviewed and you raised concerns and you went into the specifics of why you're concerned as Family Watch regarding the rollout of the plain sexual education aspect of life orientation, as well as you feel at Family Watch they feel there's an agenda regarding this and that. So if you can just tell our listeners who out there, what is the what are your concerns, or what are family life concerns, and Family Watch International's concerns regarding the rollout of the sexual education aspect of it in its current form, with its current proposal?
Sure. Thank you for that question. As you mentioned, Family Watch and myself personally, I'm an advisor to a number of African and Islamic countries at the United Nations. And there is an insidious agenda on the part of multiple UN agencies to change all the gender and sexual norms in the societies of African countries. And the number one tool they do that with is something called comprehensive sexuality education. And to be clear, we are not against sex education and, teaching children to protect themselves from sexually transmitted diseases and pregnancy. But this is an insidious form of sexuality education that sexualizes children at an early age. The World Health Organization is part of this agenda, and everything that I'm going to tell you, you can Google and verify for yourself. So for example, you can Google the World Health Organization sexuality education standards for Europe. But in there, you can see that they start with children ages 0 to 4 years old, teaching them how to touch their sexual body parts for sexual pleasure. In other words, the M word. And then also then getting at the different ages from 4 to 6 and 6 to 9, they're learning about orgasm and sexual rights and all sorts of things that are very inappropriate for children. Children are not prepared for this kind of messaging. So you have that. Then you have for example, the UN teacher training module for African teachers. And in that teacher training module for sexuality education, they have the radical gender ideology that they want African teachers to teach to children, including, for example, there is a provision in there that says gender identity means knowing whether someone is male, female, neither, or somewhere in between. Now, this is a medical impossibility. You can't be neither or somewhere in between. And this gender confusion that is being brought to children through these sexuality education programs in Africa and throughout the world is confusing children. And this could lead to cross-sex hormones, which could lead to body mutilating surgeries, which can lead to permanent infertility. When we know that a child's gender confusion, if left alone, usually resolves itself in 90% or more of the children once they get all the way through puberty. So we are just very concerned about the health and innocence of especially young children of minor age who are receiving these sexualizing messages through sexuality education being pushed by UN agencies throughout the world, and especially in Africa.
Thank you, Sharon. Ismail, how do you respond as somebody who is part of the planning curriculum of life orientation? So, I mean, you are quite aware in terms of what's happening, especially if we focus on South Africa and the implementation thereof. How do you respond in terms of what is being outlined and how much so I'm trying to understand, is everything directed by the UN and then South Africa needs to follow, or how much independence does the Department of Education, yourself as curriculum planners, have in terms of determining the curriculum, or does it come scripted lesson plans and that they need to be implemented?
Thank you for the opportunity to respond to Sharon's statements. First and foremost, South Africa has its own context, and therefore the comprehensive sexuality education that we're advocating and that we're implementing in our schools is not directly connected to the United Nations Comprehensive Sexuality Education Program. Our program has been set up, the scripted lesson plans has been set up from within South Africa. We've used experts within our own academia, but also from within our schools. Our senior subject curriculum planners have made contributions to the development of those scripted lesson plans, because our context in South Africa, in our townships, in our rural and in our urban areas, are quite different to what is being proposed by the United Nations Comprehensive Sexuality Education Program. And when we talk about the issue of comprehensive sexuality education, we're making about the comprehensive support through the National Schools Health Program. We are able then to support our learners, one, in terms of the psychosocial support that is part of the CSE that we teach in our schools. We talk about sexual health support so that learners can go to the local clinics and engage in terms of getting the necessary support. If there are learners that have mental issues, then they also get the kind of support from the Department of Health. So When we're talking comprehensive sexuality education in a South African context, we're talking about collaboration between not only the education department, but we're also talking about collaboration with the Department of Health and with the academia to ensure that what we're advocating within our schools is one that is going to be protecting our learners. And so we're not advocating for 0 to 4 and 4 to 11 or 4 to 6 years old about masturbation, etc. No, that doesn't come into the context at all. We, in terms of the scripted lesson plans that have been developed, is age appropriate, making learners aware of themselves. And as the age develops, as we look at the chronological age of our learners, so the scripted lessons are developed in order to make it comfortable for the teacher who has a challenge in speaking about some of these very sensitive topics, for them to be able to mediate that within the classroom. Just from a education department perspective, I mean, we've engaged with our faith-based organizations, the Muslim Judicial Council. We've met with the Jewish schools. We've met with the Anglican church groupings, with the Methodist Church, and a number of the school governing bodies. And I know we have a colleague on the panel, but we've engaged at all levels in terms of looking at the scripted lesson plans. So it is not something that we've extracted from the United Nations and that we are now simply just making available. No, this has been developed within South Africa and speaks to a South African context. We speak about comprehensive sexual education. We don't talk to the issue of sex education. Because our comprehensive sexuality education looks at the overall development of our young people.
Okay, so Matekanya, I'd like you to come in here. Has the consultation with your association schools been comprehensive, inclusive, and sufficient? What are your member bodies saying? Are they concerned in terms of the scripted lesson plans being prescriptive in terms of this, the teachers, from what I heard, even concerns from teacher unions, they don't have much leeway in terms of using their unique approach as they would have in other subjects to do this. They are told to stick to the script, so not much leeway is there. What is your response?
Thank you very much, Miriam, once again, for have brought this matter once again on the table. We had thought as National Association of this School Government that this matter has been closed. Closed in the sense that now it created a very heated debate, if you remember, a year before last. And we agreed with the Department of Education that now this matter, scripted sexuality, will not be forced over our children and our teachers or in the system. But if people want it, they would organize. And I think that was the agreement that we had with the Department of Education. However, I am listening very carefully with the panelists there, fellow panelists, to try and modify these things and say age appropriate and all those things. But I think he's aware, is very much aware, maybe he has to explain that what is in this thing, what is behind this thing, how much money has been the department given, because really and truly, I could not just realize why department is so fighting so badly to bring these things when the country says we don't want these things to be taught to our children. But as a department, they are deciding with a body outside the country. When the parents, everybody says, no, we don't want this thing. Now, I really don't know. Maybe he has to convince me that because there's no benefit that that the Department of Education know more than the parents themselves. And we said to them, it is time that we do away, we decolonize the education. And one way of decolonizing the education is to decolonize the way you want to talk to our children about sex in the curriculum. Please stop bringing foreign beliefs, foreign ideologies into the system of education in South Africa. And that's exactly what we said. So I don't know, because at one stage, this thing stopped, and at one stage, we agreed with the department. I think Dr. Whittle, we agreed with Dr. Whittle, and then we pushed him to write a letter, because he agreed that now this thing will not be pushed through the throats of the children and the parents in schools, but if a school, a particular school wants that, but it appears they have come back now, because last time we were told that they have changed. They've changed here and there. We have not yet seen the policy, and at the same time, when they said they have changed, they have never given us that policy, the policy that they have changed from the initial policy. Now, and we don't really understand, because you can't start workshopping teachers, workshopping everybody in the department, and when we rise against that, then you stop, then you reframe it and build it and say, you come back and say, no, we have changed the policy. It is not the same as it was, but it was just that. So they want to bring these things through the window. That's why they don't tell us anymore. We just hear from the radios. And Miriam, I must thank you that if it was not you, we would just hear that now it has been implemented once again in schools. But what we want, maybe then we have an opportunity, Miriam, just the gentleman, to explain exactly how much money did they get to who, and who is driving this thing behind, so that we know that we don't have a chance, then our children are going to be taught what we do not want to know in terms of their education.
Okay, so we're going to take a short break. When we get back, we will ask both Ismail and Sharon as well, because Sharon is quite knowledgeable in terms of the funders and the backers behind who is funding this sexuality programs in Africa. So we can get a response both from Ismail and Sharon. Please do stay on the line. We'll be back after this break.
From the townships of South Africa, the refugee camps in Syria, or orphanages in Yemen, the eyes of the needy speak volumes with just one glare. We know what it's like to be at ground zero, with food essentials, clothing and blankets, fresh water portal trucks, and even on-site navigators. We use every cent to better their tomorrow. Become part of our journey to bring relief to all. Go to www.ashrafulaid.org or call us on 011-809-8181. Ashraful Aid, under the auspices of Maulana Suhail Wadi.
These days, I'm more health conscious than ever. So tonight, it's stir fry for dinner, cooked in healthy Helios pure sunflower cooking oil. Helios is pure sunflower goodness, packed with omega-6. That's good for your heart, and is approved as part of the Heart and Stroke Foundation eating plan. Dinner's ready! Helios, pure sunflower cooking oil. A healthy family is a happy one.
Did you know a sponsored water well and borehole allows children to go back to school, empowers communities, and is a means of sadaqah jariyah? There are many villages in Africa and Afghanistan that are in need of water wells and boreholes. Sponsor a water well in Africa at 14,500 rands, or a borehole in Africa and Afghanistan at 49,500 rands. Call Africa Muslims Agency on 011 834 8685 or donate at Africa Muslims Agency. .co.za. Africa Muslims Agency, inspiring the spirit of giving.
Time to spice up your life at All Things Spice, situated at level 1 of the Atrium Overport. We are stockers of various original spices, wet masalas, dry masalas, herbs, powders, as well as health powders. We cater to those looking for whole spices, as well as convenient all-in-one spice mixtures, premixes, ginger and garlic, and a variety of pastes, a variety of basmati and cellar rices, dals, baking items, and prayer goods. We also stock the famous umbrella ice cream, as well as Burfi and Bombay Crush ice cream. At All Things Spice, we provide convenience, quality at reasonable prices. Come visit us at Shop 29D Level 1, the Atrium Overport. All Things Spice. Take advantage of our opening specials while stocks last. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at All Things Spice for exclusive offers and competitions.
Babu, why don't you loosen your belt a bit more?
But why now?
Well, it's very tight, blocking air to your brain.
Haju, this is only a start. I need to tighten up a bit more. Funds are tight and the cost of living is high.
Funds are not tight. It's your haram insurance which is tightening our barakat.
Okay, Haju. I will call my insurance friend tomorrow.
Maybe I must tighten up on my cooking from now on too.
No, Haju, we don't need to tighten up. It's okay. Look, I'm even throwing away my belt.
Don't tighten your belt. Change your insurance. Leaving Riba Insurance is easier than you think. Call Amana IFS for all your personal and commercial takaful needs. 0861 786 393. Amana. Leave Riba for good. Amana IFS is a registered financial services provider.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
My apologies. Welcome back. You are tuned into Salam Media. With me, your host Mariam Mia, and we are discussing the proposed sexuality component of life orientation. There's been many concerns from parent bodies, community bodies, religious bodies about the type of content, as well as the scripted lesson plans. Educators and teachers unions have also expressed concern in terms of it's very, very prescriptive in terms of what is being said, and also the concern over the age appropriate nature, as well as parents feel that they have no say, or it's not aligned to values, family values that the child has at home, and what is then being taught. Before the break, the chair of the National Association of School Governing Bodies had a question in terms of he was concerned in terms of who is actually behind this program and who is funding this program. Subject specialist for LO curriculum planner Ismail Taladia said South Africa has leverage in terms of deciding what aspects they're going to focus for in their schools, and each school is a community, so it looks according to the needs of that school community. But Matakanya wanted to know actually who is funding the program and who is behind the program and the funding. So maybe before I get to Ismail for global picture, let me ask Sharon Slater joining us from Arizona. So who are the funders of this program, and is there an agenda behind this?
So I would love to answer that question, but before I do so, I think I need to respond to the gentleman who spoke before that question was asked, because while I agree with him that the programs that are on the website of the government to teach sexuality education programs for South Africa, the scripted programs, they don't start as early in teaching some of these harmful activities. On your government's website, it basically claims, and it's citing to the UN agencies that their technical guidance on sexuality education, and it says, sexuality education or comprehensive sex ed does not sexualize children. It does not increase sexual activity. It decreases the number of sexual partners, reduces sexual risk-taking, and increases the use of condoms and other forms of contraception. Well, the document that it cites to, we actually commissioned an independent agency to look into those citations, because that definitely is coming directly from the United Nations, that's quoted on your website. And what we found was, looking at those exact same studies that the UN points to make these false claims, is that, in fact, you can even look at this study. You can go to sexedreport.org. That's sexedreport.org. They did a global study and took all of these together and found that there was an 87% failure rate for CSE programs globally, and in Africa it was an 89% failure rate for providing evidence that CSE lowers STDs or teen pregnancy. And in fact, it said in Africa in particular, there's a 24% number that was very concerning to the evaluators of this, that showed that these sex ed programs were actually increasing sexual risk-taking, thus resulting in teen pregnancies that were actually measured. Then when he claims that masturbation, for example, is not in your current programs, I mean, I'm on your website right now, and I looked at your curriculum a while ago, but I was just refreshing myself, and it actually has teachings about masturbation, also about LGBTQ and sexual orientation and gender identity. And while you said that this is completely independent of the United Nations, I have analyzed so many CSE programs that the United Nations has put together for various African countries, and I can see the footprint of the UN. And if we wanted to talk about masturbation in particular, let me just do a search in this document that I have up in front of me from your government's website. This would be the, let's see, okay. This would be, I'm looking at the citation here, sexuality education in life orientation. This is grade 11, and it says, quote, this is page 105, many teenage girls as well as boys will begin to masturbate during adolescence, but may be confused about it because of negative and threatening messages they have received. Masturbation is in no way harmful. In the age of HIV/AIDS, it's actually a safe alternative to unprotected sexual intercourse. Now, that's just, directly responding to what he said about, masturbation being found or not being found in your national curriculum. Then if you look at sexual orientation, I'm going to do a search right now in your publication for sexual orientation. And what I find is, let's see, just a second. It's critical that you make it clear in the class that everyone has the right to their own sexual orientation. Sexual orientation is not a decision or a choice that one makes. One makes choices and decisions about sex. Well, that may or may not be true, but there's multiple teachings here about sexual orientation, LGBTQ, and so forth and so on, in a definite attempt to normalize these kinds of lifestyles. And Family Watch International, we don't care if sexual relations are heterosexual, homosexual, premarital, or extramarital. We oppose encouraging people of minor age all the way up through 18 being engaged in any kind of sexual behavior, because being involved in sex, all the studies show, puts them at a negative risk for lower education attainment, more suicide, more depression, more alcohol abuse, more crime, everything that can be measured that's negative, children are more at risk for if they are becoming sexually active prematurely. And when it comes for having sex outside of marriage, this is the case. So I can go through your different, in fact, I'm in grade 10 right now, and I was scrolling through here and I saw a pencil picture of two people laying on top of each other and, simulated, I guess, and as if they're having sex. It looks like it could be two females. So there's just a lot of things that I know most parents in South Africa would find highly objectionable. They are in your sex education. So that's the first thing. With regard to your question, who is behind this? Who is funding this? I did a webinar, and you can go to our website at familywatch.org/webinars and click on the one about UNESCO, where I outline UNESCO's work within South Africa to try to neutralize religious opposition to your sex education programs, trying to actually co-opt the religious leaders to get them in support of this. I believe that's the webinar. I believe I also have an ad from UN agencies advertising for people within South Africa to advocate for comprehensive sexuality education to the public and to your government. So the UN agencies are heavily involved in South Africa, advocating for your CSE, trying to get it adopted, trying to and minimize opposition to CSE, hiring people to counteract any negative messaging against CSE. And I can tell by looking at your curriculum, because again, I've analyzed so many programs, CSE programs that are promoted by or published by the United Nations, that I can see, you've adapted it. You don't have the exact curriculum from the United Nations, but a lot of the same ideology, even some of the same wording is in your programs that come from UN pushed sexuality education. So, people don't have to believe me that we never say anything that you can't search out for yourself. Go to your government website yourself and look up this, grade 10, grade 11, do searches in this curriculum for masturbation, pleasure, sexual orientation, gender identity, LGBTQ, and you will find that your government program is seeking to mainstream and get acceptance for these behaviors, these lifestyles, and sexual choices.
So, thank you for that, Sharon. Ismail, your response to the question.
Yes, I think it's quite important to respond to this. First and foremost, I did not say that we did not speak about masturbation. I said we speak about masturbation at an age-appropriate level. And so we do have it in grade 11, which is your 17-year-olds, and as Sharon has pointed out. So all of the scripted lesson plans that has been developed speaks to age appropriateness. Now, again, I'm saying, and I want to stand fully on this particular position, is that we have developed the scripted lesson plans in terms of what is appropriate for South Africa and speaks to South Africa's context. So the people that were involved in the development of these scripted lesson plans are all our South Africans, and if one or two of the academics have taken resources from UN documents, then it's not a major issue, except to say that everything that we have done speaks to the South African context. Now, Mr. Matakania made mention of the fact that the school governing bodies have written to the Department of Basic Education to speak to the issue of the scripted lesson plans. And so it is up to the school governing bodies to make a decision at particular schools, at individual schools. There's not a blanket statement that says that we should not be teaching comprehensive sexuality education. comprehensive sexuality education has been part of our curriculum since 2001 when we moved over to the CAPS curriculum in 2010, 2011, 2012, and we've adapted the sex education which we had started in life orientation in 2001 and adapted it in terms of the CAPS curriculum. So it's not something new to us in terms of our curriculum. Yes, we've added the LGBTI because it's real. It's in our communities. You cannot wish them away. If we in the month of or the 16 days of gender-based violence against women and children, and part of that violence has been the issue of members of the LGBTI community being murdered, being bullied, being all sorts of things done to them. So it becomes important as we teach values, and the cornerstone of life orientation is to teach values. And if we look at what is happening within our country, then
Ismail, I just before you go, Ismail, I just want to
yeah,
interject because you
yes,
made a very important point. Now, is you said part of it is teaching values, and when I interviewed Biswa Mpini, who's the National Program Officer, UNESCO Health and HIV Education,
yeah,
and that's where we differed in terms of, she said, well, not me personally, but my guest differed with her because they said they teaching physiology, biology of it in the scripted lesson plans, and now you're saying values. And for me, then, is the value of abstinence offered to the children? Offered to
yes,
the children as
absolutely.
yeah, but in what context, in what capacity is abstinence? Can we just maybe dwell, because I think that is one of the important issues that I think all religious bodies, parents, communities, Sharon's foundation as well, this value of abstinence, and in what capacity, in what are we actually telling our children with regard to abstinence?
Okay, so first and foremost,
Whose value?
I
Sharon,
think
can Ismail just respond, and then I'll get you to provide input as well.
Sure.
okay. First and foremost, what underpins our CSE is abstinence. So first and foremost, we speak abstinence. And outside of abstinence, we have to educate our learners about what is available in the event of them being, I mean, whatever happens. Now, let me give you a practical example of this. If we look at the Gauteng statistics um, on teenage pregnancy over the past year, and we talk about 23,000 learners that had given birth. If we take that back to the period in which this happened, it meant that the bulk of these activities happened during lockdown. Now, if it happened during lockdown, it meant that these learners were in their homes, in their family situations, and probably 80-90% of the pregnancy happened during that period. Now the question is, and this is to the Mr. Matakania, is what are we teaching our parents? Because this speaks to the issue of incest, it speaks to the issue of family assault, it speaks to the issue of family members being engaged in sexual activity with our learners. What messaging must we give our learners in order to protect themselves? And when we teach comprehensive sexuality education in our life orientation, it's first and foremost abstinence, because that is what we preach. However, we do make learners aware, because a learner picks up a cell phone and the learner is able to open up a whole world of sexuality, sexual content on their phones. So it becomes important as an education department to be able to guide our learners, to guide our parents, to get the assistance from our parents in terms of how they want the messaging to happen within the education system. So in the absence of building a strong family valued unit in our communities, we need to be able to provide that from the education department side as well, to strengthen what is supposed to happen within the family unit.
Sharon, thank you, Ismail, for that. Sharon, you can go ahead and provide your input regarding what we were discussing regarding abstinence and values.
Right. Here's the thing. Values. Values is a very subjective term, right? Whose values should be taught in the schools? What role should the schools be involved in when teaching values, when the values of the religious communities within South Africa come in conflict with the values of those of the educators who may feel like other things should be taught? You know, as you just brought up the word abstinence, I do not see abstinence as a main focus of any of these comprehensive sexuality education programs. In fact, most often you'll see the statement that abstinence, actually the United Nations even has a statement saying that abstinence is harmful to children's sexual and reproductive health and rights, because what comprehensive sexuality education does is it takes the right-based approach to sex education as opposed to what we consider to be that optimal health-based approach. Obviously, children who are not engaged in sex, who are practicing abstinence, are going to avoid, all the different problems emotionally and physically, the STDs and the pregnancies. So our position is that the program should be abstinence-based and not rights-based. And when we talk about, he was talking about the values, that this whole curriculum was created with consultation with religious leaders and to meet the values. According to all the religious leaders that I'm in contact with in South Africa, the LGBTQ issues are not part of their values. Is, preventing harassment and violence against people who identify as LGBTQ part of their values? Yes. I think across the board, that's the values, I think, of both sides. But I think these curriculums go beyond that and mainstream, as far as what I've looked at, including the South African curriculum, they mainstream those kind of sexual behaviors and identities. And when it gets into that realm, then this can be harmful. It is clear to me that the South Africa curriculum mainstreams the values of the United Nations, and it has, again, their fingerprints all over it. And I think that by and large, if you take South Africa as a whole, it's largely a conservative people, a religious people who have very strong values that I think would be more in line with the abstinence-based, let's save sexual behavior until marriage. And I don't see that this curriculum is more geared towards, let's have safe sex. We believe children are going to have sex anyways, so we're going to teach them all the different ways they can protect themselves, because, and abstinence is hardly mentioned at all in this. So I think you've got these two, world views for what should be taught to children, and this would take the less conservative view, a little bit of the middle of the road, because the South African curriculum is not as aggressive in the CSE realm as many of the curriculum that I've seen in other African countries, but it definitely has a lot of the CSE elements that I don't believe that the majority of South African parents would be in support of.
Thank you, Sharon. Matekanya. So you heard what Ismail said in terms of the governing body can then have a look at it, decide, and in terms of their school community, in terms of how they want to proceed with this. Has that been communicated to your members? And in terms of the school management team, have the school management team, the HOD for LO, the principal, deputy principal, have they sat down with the parent bodies and actually discussed these issues? Has it reached that level as yet?
No, Miriam, thank you very much once again. As much as one is trained by the hearing here, I can't sometimes hear properly here, but you'll forgive me that. But what I want to say, Miriam, is that I think time is now that we have to start debating our education more broader than just a small thing that still hold us back. Now we have said we have to decolonize this education, but people still stick to Eurocentric way of doing things. And I don't know, because when you talk values and you talk all those things, our values, our African values and European values are not the same. But you want to still impose the European values on us because they've got money. And hence I ask, who is funding this? Who is behind this? And I think those agencies from United Nations, they represent those countries in our country here. So I think this is the time that we must talk and talk and talk. That we cannot allow any time that these things must be done done for us without us. And it is done because Ismail is saying we failed our children during COVID. They also failed as a system. They did not teach our children 2021. You did not teach our children. But you can't just say, and then we failed, whereas we thought we are in the same boat. We are all, both of us, the department and parents, affected by COVID. Then you are saying, no, we failed to count the statistics, forgetting that now this was the cause of the pandemic because children did not do anything. And you know that the majority of parents are working. And when they went to work, children being children, they did what they did. And that's why the statistics like that. But you can't put that as a failure and say, no, the parents failed. This number of children were pregnant in front of their children. We are saying to you as a department, bring us on board, teach us if there is any way, but teach us the African way. How should we talk to these children? Don't just impose these things from Europe on us and say, no, our children must masturbate in the class. And you know how children are. They are going to really mock this. They are going to mock this thing. And I'm telling you, when you are creating a situation that nobody is going to control in the school, because the truth of the matter now, without us as parents, there is no discipline in schools. And hence we are talking to parents, and the parents come on board and show that now if you want to achieve quality education in your lifetime, then we must be able to support schools in terms of discipline in schools. But there you are breaking it. Because these children are going to mock this thing and going to just talk. You are saying age appropriate. And I don't know when you talk of age appropriate, because to us, all these are children. And it is time that I think we must have a convention where we are going to discuss and balance these things when we say these are children. Right now, we are saying children must go and get a gap. And we have been told that children who are 12 years up and all those things, they don't need our consent. Now, we don't know. Then we are just creating confusion all over because we don't know where should we start now controlling these children. And we are going to be told, these 12 children, then they can masturbate in the school. Then it means as parents, we don't have any say to these children because they are 12 years, let them go and masturbate. That's why we are talking about...
Matakanya, we are almost, our time we're running out of time, but we hear you well. And I think for me, the take home from this discussion is, education is a circle or triangle where child being on the top of the pyramid, and it's a joint journey that a parent and an educator takes in leading a child towards a responsible adulthood, including making responsible sexual choices, decisions in that aspect. And I think for me, the take back is here. We need better engagement, better consultation, between the educators, so the educators, educational institution, Department of Education on one end, and then the parents, community, and all the community structures that support children towards responsible adulthood. And I think they should, especially on sexual education, it's important. Our children need to be educated on sexual values, sexual etiquette, so to speak. But I think there needs to be a lot more consultation. I think we're speaking over each other and not for the in the best interest of the child. We all have the best interest of the child at heart, but we need to find middle ground. A school is a community. It's a microcosm of the community, and I think, Ismail, perhaps maybe people like yourself, curriculum developers, and that need to have workshops, set up workshops, visit schools in districts, in localities, get input from parent body representatives, community leaders, even include the children themselves in terms of what is it, because they're in the middle here. And I feel for them in this confusing world. Everybody's pulling in their side and everybody is making value judgments on their behalf. So, yes, in closing, a minute for yourself, Sharon, to respond, a minute, Ismail, and a minute, Matakanya, in closing. Ismail, you can go ahead.
Yes.
Thank you. Let me just say very quickly, we've engaged in teacher training. In fact, on Saturday, we had training on with the SGBs in the Western Cape, in Khayelitsha, with regards to the implementation of CSE. And I want to say very clearly, there are two things that underpin what we do. One is we talk about values first and foremost, because I'm a religious individual, and therefore that drives what I do. And secondly, we are always looking at the best interest of our learners. And when we're talking about the implementation of comprehensive sexuality education, we talk about being part of the integrated health schools program in South Africa. So it's working education, Department of Health, and the Department of Social Development. Thank you.
Sharon, you can go ahead.
Sure. Within the last, I believe, 20 minutes, South Africa, I believe, has signed on to an agreement with UNFPA and UNESCO, a 10-year commitment to implement comprehensive sexuality education that will link children to sexual and reproductive health rights and services. This is without any consultation with the parents of all of these children. This agreement dictates some of the content of this sexuality education. Again, not even ever consulting with the parents. And this is in violation of multiple UN treaties that recognize the rights of parents to guide the education and upbringing of their children. We have created a whole website on this agreement where you can go to at ESA, that stands for Eastern Southern African Commitment. So you can go to esacommitment.org and you can see this agreement that the signing for this for the ESA countries was supposed to have concluded an hour ago. Unless they postpone it, your government has signed on to it. I would be interested to note if that went through. But if they have, this is something that every parent in South Africa needs to be very concerned about and push back against the South African government. They should not be deciding these sensitive issues that touch upon religious and cultural values and values of families and get this information to children without their consent. So we are very concerned. We care about the children and the parents and families of South Africa, and I'm grateful to you to allow me to raise my voice on this program. So thank you.
Thank you, Sharon, and we're grateful that you've given up your time, with the time difference being now it's 2 p.m., so given up your sleep as well. We wish you all the best in your organization and strength to keep fighting, speaking your truth, and creating awareness in preservation of our family life and family values. And Matakanya, you can conclude. I'm giving you a minute to conclude as well.
Thank you very much, Miriam. Then we just want to send a very strong message to the Department of Basic Education that whatever they do, as much as they have been given a mandate to run the Department of Basic Education in the country, that does not mean that we should not be consulted. What is it that is going to be taught to our children, particularly when it comes to the values? We want our values, South African values. We do not really want foreign values and then further continue confusing these children. These are our children, and they will be children to us. Then we want to guide them in their endeavor to become adults. But where we don't know, we must be consulted. We must be brought on board and understand the reasons. We don't just want things to be imposed on us. And when we say, no, we don't want, because the agreement, we reached an agreement last time to say, no, this thing is not going to be imposed on our schools. But there it is, it comes back once again. And we are not being told. We just had it. And Miriam, thank you very much to have brought us here. We would not have had this thing that is coming back into our schools without being us knowing, without being us taken on board and say, because of 1, 2, 3, 4, then it is true. Then we have been told that this thing has been there 2021. I mean, 2017, I think, since the advent of this new curriculum. This thing has been there. But there was been, and then why is this noise when this thing has been there for all these years? Now, then there is this noise. But you don't want to tell us now what causes the noise, because this thing, as we are saying, it has been there. But it has been there. We were not told that it's been there. So we are saying, whatever you do, we need to be consulted. These are our children, irrespective of whatever age they are. They, in terms of Africanism, African values, they are children until they are children. We always guide them. Whatever age they are, we guide them. So please, we want to be consulted, and please urgently let them call a convention so that we are both brought on board and understand why you brought these things back when we said, really, we don't want it. Thank you.
Thank you for all my panelists for joining us. Yes, we will bring you more information as it comes to light. And at the end of the day, as Matakanya said, maybe a convention, but we need to speak to each other to help and guide our children towards responsible adulthood, which means making informed, responsible choices aligned within their family value system. Thanks so much. We're going to be back after a short break, and we speaking about the legal implications of mandatory vaccination. All this after the break. Please stay tuned.